Hey there, it's Dr. Aliotto, naturopathic medical doctor. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about gut health and the microbiome and 5 ways to support your gut health on your own. Okay, so gut health is one of my most exciting, favorite things to talk about and treat, partially because of my personal experience with gut health, but also it's just at the core of our health. So first of all, what is the microbiome? The microbiome is the healthy gut bacteria that is in your small intestine and large intestine. And we don't want too much unhealthy bacteria, and we want a good amount of healthy bacteria because that is going to feed back to your brain to support your mood, your energy, cognition. Okay, it's also going to support your immune health. It's also going to support your digestion, of course, right? So if we have an imbalanced microbiome, we can have all sorts of symptoms. We can have bloating, extra gas, burping, constipation, diarrhea, nausea, vomiting, reflux. We can have skin rashes, joint pain, brain fog, headaches, etc. So there's a lot that's involved with the microbiome, and that's why it is so important. The other reason, again, that is becoming more and more important to talk about is the relationship with brain health, the nervous system, and mental health. I'm going to save that for another video, but just knowing the correlation is extremely valuable. Okay, so if we have an imbalanced microbiome, well, A, what do we do about it? And B, why do we have that, right? So there's all sorts of reasons for having an imbalanced microbiome, okay? It can be from birth, right? Maybe we were born C-section and we didn't get mom's really healthy gut bacteria to mix with ours. Maybe we had concussions at a young age or even into adulthood that can cause a change in the microbiome. Travel, antibiotic use, birth control use, drug use, stress, poor diet, right? All of these things can affect your microbiome. So sometimes it's not super important to know why the microbiome is imbalanced unless that trigger is still occurring. So for example, if we're still eating McDonald's on a weekly basis, that could be something we want to cut out and know as a causative factor. But if it was a concussion in the past and combination with antibiotic use, it's important to know those things so that we can know that for the future, but sometimes it's hard to pinpoint causative factors. So all that being said, okay, if we have an imbalanced microbiome because of the symptoms, we know because of the symptoms that you're experiencing, well, what are some things we can do about it, right? And again, this is very general. It's not going to be individualized, which is generally what I do when you are a patient of mine. But when we talk about gut health entirely, there are some things that we can implement into our life, okay? So let's talk about 5 ways to support gut health. So number 1, how are you eating? Meaning, are you eating on the go? Are you eating in a stressful environment? Are you just stuffing food into your mouth? Are you skipping meals altogether? Right? That is going to affect digestion. It's going to affect the absorption of the nutrients that you're consuming. And sometimes it can also cause pain, constipation, diarrhea, reflux, etc. So what we really want to do is we want to eat in a low stress environment. We want to chew our food. We want to taste our food. We really want to be present with our meal. I understand in society that can be really challenging, but it is important because of our nervous system. So we have an autonomic nervous system, sympathetic, which is fight or flight, and parasympathetic, which is rest and digest. We can't be in both at the same time. Okay, so if we're in fight or flight and we're eating, well, we're not able to properly digest our food, and then we can have bloating and stomach pain, right? We're also, again, not going to absorb all those nutrients. So if we can shift slightly over, if at the very minimum slightly, into the parasympathetic nervous system, we're going to be able to digest our food much better. So number 1, slow down, chew your food, try to consume your food in a lower stress environment. Number 2, what are you eating, right? Are you eating, as I mentioned before, fast food? Are you eating packaged, processed, high sugar, high artificial flavorings, colorings type food, right? Many of you might not be, but we have to understand how the food that we're consuming affects our body, right? And I'm not talking about food intolerances yet. Again, that might, be another video, but when we're choosing the food we're eating, we want to choose the food that's going to fuel our body, right? We want to choose the food that is nutrient rich, that has vitamins, minerals, protein, antioxidants, right? Fat and carbohydrates generally come with that, but we really want to be mindful about what we're choosing to eat, okay? So having whole foods such as fruits and vegetables and protein products that come from the earth, right? Meaning lentils and beans and leafy green vegetables and healthy fruits, berries, grains that come from, the earth, rather than I'm going to pick on Cheetos or highly processed bread products, right? Or highly processed chicken nuggets, right? These are not, they're still food, but they're not really fueling our body the way that we want to. So we really want to cut out those processed foods and choose foods that are more whole, okay? So consuming healthier foods on a regular basis, meaning like breakfast, lunch, dinner, or if you're just having lunch and dinner, having that as a regular type schedule for your meals. Number 3, how can we increase the healthy gut bacteria? Well, there's a couple ways. 1, we can get it from diet, and 2, we can get it from supplementation. So from our diet, we can increase probiotics with consuming fermented foods like kimchi, sauerkraut, miso, kombucha, right? These are naturally occurring healthy probiotics. Yogurt is another one, kefir, okay? The other option, and I oftentimes do utilize probiotic supplements in my office, is the probiotic supplement. And there's a couple things that I have people look at when they're choosing a probiotic. 1, that it is dairy-free. 2, that it is oftentimes refrigerated. Now they're coming out with better technology to support unrefrigerated probiotics, but if you don't know, I would choose a refrigerated one, okay? And 3, we want to choose a probiotic that has at least 2 strains of healthy bacteria, which is lactobacillus and bifidobacterium. There are several other strains, okay? But if we're just looking at those 2, that's gonna be a well-rounded probiotic to start with. Additionally, I lost my train of thought for probiotics. I'll come back to it. So probiotic supplements can be extremely valuable, okay, when we really need to repopulate our gut microbiome, okay? Number 4, is our stomach acid and the pH of our digestive system well balanced? Oftentimes, especially with reflux, but also really intense stomach pain, it can actually be a result of low stomach acid. And most often we think high stomach acid, because if it feels acidic, it's like, oh, I'm making too much acid. Well, interestingly enough, our low stomach acid and high stomach acid can mimic one another in symptoms, believe it or not. So I always think of low stomach acid before high stomach acid, because low is actually more common, even though, again, we don't really talk about it. Additionally, we can have reflux if there's any acid that's outside of the stomach, meaning if the esophageal sphincter, which connects the stomach to the esophagus, is stuck open, we can get some acid coming into the esophagus, and that is not supposed to be there. We don't want any acid in the esophagus, and if that is coming up, then it's in the wrong place, and that can cause reflux symptoms, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we have too much. All that being said, we want to make sure we have a healthy pH system. We want that stomach to be acidic, and we want to be making enough stomach acid. So some of the basic things I suggest for this is either start your day with lemon water, which is pH balancing, meaning if you have too much acid, it'll bring it down. If you have not enough, it'll bring it up. So it's really modulating. So lemon water, room temperature, could be really valuable. It's also really valuable for kickstarting bowel movement if you have a hard time with having stools. The other option to rebalance stomach acid is to have apple cider vinegar in a little bit of water with your meals or before meals. That can really help with the digestive process without buying more supplements, and it's just something that you can do on a regular basis that I find is really, really valuable for people, especially if they don't have enough stomach acid. One of the ways you'll know if you don't have enough stomach acid is if you have undigested food in your stool, or like I said, if you have pain or acid feeling in your upper abdomen after you eat, okay? This is not ruling out hernias. That could be a part of the picture, okay? And remember, none of this is medical advice. It's just education. I am not treating any of you, and I cannot diagnose you without you being a patient of mine. The last thing I want to suggest is for gut health, number 5, is magnesium. What does magnesium do? Well, most of us, believe it or not, are deficient in magnesium, okay? So what does magnesium do? We know, most of us know about magnesium for calming, right? It calms our nervous system. It can help with tense muscles, right? Or pain in the body. And it is valuable for that. There's several different types of magnesium, okay? One has an affinity for the brain. One has an affinity for the musculoskeletal system, muscles and joints. One has an affinity for the stools, and there are several others. So the magnesium that I suggest for constipation is magnesium citrate. I suggest it at night, okay, because it's also calming and it can help people sleep, especially if you have a hard time falling asleep. Magnesium can be really valuable. So magnesium citrate at night is going to help support a bowel movement in the morning, okay? So it is not a laxative, okay? You're not gonna be running to the bathroom, but you will likely notice that your stools are softer, they're easier to pass, and that is the goal, okay? Now, if you have diarrhea, magnesium would not be a great option for you. And if you have diarrhea, that probiotic is gonna be really valuable, okay? And choosing foods that are going to be supportive for your system. But magnesium can be extremely valuable for people who have gut pain, right? Who have trouble with having regular bowel movements. And of course, it's a good supportive for sleep as well, okay? So I did remember the last thing I wanted to say about probiotics, which is more is not always better, okay? We don't need 100 billion CFU, but I also don't want 1 or 2 billion CFU. So I like to be around 25 to 50 billion CFU, especially if you're just starting with probiotics, okay? So I welcome questions, I welcome comments, I welcome suggestions for future videos. Just getting started on this education piece and getting the word out there about naturopathic medicine and how we can better understand our body. So that's all for now. Thanks for listening. Have a good one.